to each other. Yeah. All right. So checklists on writing an offer. So price and terms. Consult with your buyer to arrive at the most logical offering based on the CMA and the as well as the items below, right? What you know about the property. So one of the things I like to do when doing a CMA, I do this both for sellers and buyers. So if this particular buyer, like there's questions about this property, I might, as opposed to using my laptop where we can only look at one property at a time, I print out what's called the buyer's photo gallery or the customer photo gallery in Paragon, and it shows 8 pictures of the property. And sometimes it is really helpful to print it out and lay like 3 or 4 of them out in front of them and say, so I want you to notice this one here is the same square footage, but the kitchen isn't renovated. And this one here is a little larger and the kitchen is renovated and blah, blah. Do you see where I'm going? And now you can kind of go, so these are the recent sales that tell us we're about, you know, these are comps. They're not exact comps, because that's really hard to come by, but they fall into the range. So based on what is happening here in our market, what do you think you'd like to offer on the property? Mm-hmm. Right? So, and then people go, oh, well, this one is, right? And you go, well, yes, but notice here, this one did have the kitchen renovated and it did bring the price up. You can see that in comparison to these other 2, right? Or whatever. It helps you make your point when the picture's right in front of them like that. Yeah. So then we hope that the listing agent shows lots of diverse pictures, not just everything of the living room or something. Yeah. Because we need to see, right, the kitchen and the bathrooms. Those are the, and the flooring. Yeah. Those are the items that people most want to fix and have upgraded. So yes, providing that information to help the buyer set a price. Getting the disclosure. Conveyances. Conveyances refers to, I'm on page 15, refers to what's being conveyed with the property. So the refrigerator, the stove, the dishwasher, the washer dryer. Oftentimes there is no washer dryer, so that one is a little more, right? Or the washer dryers are in horrible condition. I've sold many a very rusty washer dryer. So,
what about furniture that the buyer would be willing to sell? Does that go in notes?
No, we actually have a section in our contract that calls for furniture to be included. So what happens in furniture is you can't borrow money in a mortgage on furniture. So now you say, yes, please, let's agree to what furnishings are included, and mostly we suggest that you give yourself a little time, get a list, approve the list, negotiate the list of inclusions, whatever. And then in the contract, we put a little phrase at the end, usually that says, the furniture is deemed to have no value and is being left for the seller's convenience. So, now you can't do that with brand new furniture because the appraiser is going to go, I think not. But even in vacation rental condos, appraisers are used to the furniture being included. Yeah, it is. It's just the bank. Like if that furniture is worth $40,000, it just got put in there, you're going to have a hard time increasing the price by $40,000 of the real estate value because the neighbor, the most recent sales, didn't have a $40,000 furniture package in there, right? So you will run into issues in terms of sometimes they have to buy the furniture.
Yeah, just outside of the sale.
Outside of the sale with a bill, and then they have to show a bill of sale. All right, earnest money deposit, we talked about that, right? It's a good faith deposit, and it shows how earnest the buyer is. Time for seller acceptance. So that's a really good one. So here we have different scenarios. So we've got the situation where you call the listing agent and said, no, I haven't had any showings all week. Nobody's called. Great, it's like open field, right? How much time would you give the seller to consider your offer?
Day?
A day?
24 hours? Is that not enough?
No, that's not enough. So because we have no urgency.
3 days?
2 days is pretty good. So my question would be to the listing agent, is the seller on island or readily available to review offers? Yep, they're available, no problem. Or, well, actually, no, they're on vacation, so it's gonna be a little challenging. Give me a little extra time. Okay, fine, is 3 days enough? Oh yeah, that should be fine.
Okay.
So the second thing I wanna point out is you don't have to give people until 5 p.m. on whatever day.
Party of one.
Party of
what?
one, she's getting a
Top
lot
of
of
the
attention. You don't have to give till 5 p.m. I like to give 3 p.m. because I don't want to work all night.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, so make it, 1 or 3 or something like that. So now what if the listing agent said to you, well, we have a lot of people, I've got a lot of showings. I've got a lot of showings.
Then maybe 24 hours?
You could even go less. So now you've got this window of opportunity and you want to snag this unit before somebody else puts in an offer.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to do that, however, you're going to have to give an awfully good price,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
So you're going to have to be pretty close to asking or maybe even asking price, whatever you decide the unit is worth, of course. So now you go to say, we want an answer in 8 hours
Okay.
or in 12 hours. Depending on when you make the offer, right? If you make the offer at 10 o'clock in the morning, we'd like an answer by the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens here is that the sellers go, well, you've got all these showings, but nobody's, you've already had a bunch of showings. We've had no other offers. Let's just go with this. This is great. And get it done. That could be the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I've had situations like that, and I've said to the sellers, look, we have a lot of interest, let's just hold off answering and see if we can't get another offer. And they go, no, this is the price we wanted, we're totally happy with this offer. Okay. So you just don't know what the seller's situation is in that regard until you make the offer.
Yeah.
So that would be a time to squeeze it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to snag this offer right away. Another example is, it just came on market yesterday, your client saw it, they put in an offer, and they want it now. So you go, I'm giving you 12 hours to answer this, or 24, depending on when let's say you made the offer at noon today, you can say, answer me by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Quick, right? Yeah. If, on the other hand, I called the listing agent, and the listing agent said, oh yeah, I've got another offer and I'm expecting a couple more. And then my question is, okay, when are you going to review offers?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're not reviewing offers until Saturday. So today's Wednesday. I go, okay, fine. So
Then
now I have no choice.
You need your letter and the earnest money and
Well, I have no choice.
Yeah.
I have to give them 5 days. So
Yeah.
now we're not going to get an answer till Sunday. That's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
So now the only thing I've got going for me is I know there's other offers. I'm going to put my best foot forward, right? Yeah.
And does like the first one in help?
Sometimes, but often not. It
Yeah.
really does come down to
To money.
the offer. Well, and then that the offer matches. I've gotten offers accepted that weren't the highest price, but they were cash, or the closing, they allowed for the right timing.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, you really want to know as much as possible so that you can write the offer that's most attractive,
Mhm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then price would be the only
Yeah.
element. Financing terms. Financing terms shouldn't be an issue anymore. Lenders are closing incredibly fast. The impression to make on your buyer is that you're going to have to work with this lender. You're going to have to produce all of this material. If you haven't gotten pre-approved already, which under this circumstance, you hope they have, which means they've actually applied for a loan. They've actually given their tax returns. They've actually provided 3 months of bank statements. Now the lender knows a lot about them, says, yep, they're good to go, I'll send them, give them a loan. And now the only thing that needs approval is the house or the condo. So being able to close quickly is not the issue for a lender with somebody who's pre-approved. But you always want to check with the lender.
Mm-hmm.
So I have come to you, I'm your client, and say, here, I've got a pre-approval from, Joe, And so you call up Joe and you say, Joe, I'm writing an offer for Marion. We need a pre-approval letter at $395,000. That's the offer we're making. And can we close in 30 days? Because the seller would like to close really fast. And Joe says, oh, Marion. And you go like, wow, what do you mean, Marion? Well, you know, she's self-employed. And yes, I've got a pre-approval, but I still need some documents from her. So I can close in 30 days, but you better give me a 15-day extension in case we need to extend. So now I personally don't like writing offers that already are thinking about using the extension, but sometimes you have to do that. And so now I go after Marion and say, Marion, the lender tells me that they still need these 3 things from you, and how long is it going to take you to provide those? Because that depends on how quickly they can approve your loan, and we can write a 30-day offer. So this is a little dependent on your responsiveness here. You'd be surprised how many people go for a loan and go to buy a property, and they're like kind of laissez-faire about oh yeah, I was supposed to do that. Yeah, no, I didn't get around to that. So sticking with our clients and making sure they get their documentation into their lender is part of what I do anyway. I don't just leave it to the lender because I don't want to be surprised a week later that, oh no, we still are waiting for documents. What do you mean you're waiting for documents, you know?
No.
The lender should get you a pre-approval letter at any time. Any lender should be available over the weekend and whatnot, and they just get you that letter, and it's made out to $395. Now our contract says that you'll provide a pre-approval letter, you know, a little after acceptance, and that is because what if you negotiate the price up to $405? Now you don't have a pre-approval at $405, so you need to provide a new pre-approval at $405 within a couple of days after acceptance on your contract.
Okay.
And then no loan approval, you want to talk to the lender about that, make sure that's fine. Closing date, we talked about that, right? You're going to talk to the listing agent. What does the seller need? Well, the sellers usually, if they're living in the place, it's a lot to move, right? Yeah. So no. And I don't mean to make fun, but when you've got elderly people, it's even more challenging because they just can't move that fast.
Yeah.
And our condos, a lot of our condos have been owned by people for 20, 25 years, and they're finally going like, okay, I'm going to go move back to the mainland to be with my grandchildren or whatever. And so it's a little more, yeah, it's just stuff and overwhelming to them. We also have a lot of second home owners, so they're selling and they've got stuff in there, but they're not here. So now you have to orchestrate, you know, the seller has to come and find their stuff and pack it up and whatnot. But in the meantime, you have to convince the buyer and seller to agree on what items stay. And then this person comes and says, oh, I know I didn't put this on the list, but my grandmother gave this to me and I really want it. And now you end up negotiating over this piece. So addressing the furniture is probably one of the, and the personal items is one of the toughest things. So I like to go around and tell people, don't expect any of the little personal items to stay. Just don't expect it. That's, you know, we're talking just furniture, chairs and tables and beds and dressers. So, yeah. Okay. So closing date, home warranty. We tend not to do home warranties here. They're more popular in the mainland. Repair limits. So this is an interesting technique that I like to use. Not so much on a condo, although it might apply. But we have something called an as-is addendum. And an as-is addendum supposedly says, I will buy it as is. Now people ask for repairs anyway. And here's another place where the seller gets very aggravated. Wait a minute, you gave me an as-is addendum, I gave you a good price because you gave me an as-is addendum, and now you're nickel and diming me with requests for repairs? So I make it a real point to explain to buyers that an as-is addendum needs to be honored. And then they say to you, yeah, but what if something big is wrong. Well, there's a way around that. So your as-is addendum actually has room for a little clause that you can say, buyer shall cover all repairs of $1,500 or less. And now you've put a limit. I'll do all the diddly stuff, the buyer, right? Because that's what you're taking on. Don't bother me about torn screens, or that, you know, a screw is missing here, or that a door doesn't latch properly, or the toilet paper holder is loose. You know, just leave me alone, right? You'll take care of that. And one of the things I do for people sometimes is say, you know what, I'm going to give you the services of a handyman as a closing gift. So we'll have somebody come in and fix all those things for you. They love that. It's a way to deal with it. But what if we go through the property and we discover that there is a leak, or that there's dry rot and there's some repair that I didn't realize needed to be done on this deck or whatever it is. In other words, a larger issue. Well, now your as-is addendum has clearly said, this is beyond $1,500, I have a right to come back to you. So that's what this means when it talks about limits of repair, right? Setting a limit as to what I will handle and what I have a right to come back to you for. And then if there's any need for any special clauses, our contract is 14 pages long. It has almost every possible contingency covered. Sometimes we need to add some things into the section that's blank. We have clauses in our clause editor and zip forms that helps you do that in case you needed to. What would be an example of a kind of a clause would be if somebody needs to sell a house before they can buy this, there's a contingency for that that talks about we need to sell a house, so you could just put that in there. But at this point in time, there's very few things that come up that need to go into the special section. So, and if you do, you ask your broker for help in drafting the paragraph and that sort of thing. So, now we're at this exercise, and this is kind of cool because this is a good example of how scripting can really help, not so much with detailed, use these exact words, but rather to get it in our brain that here's a way to answer this. So if I just know a trigger word, I'll go, oh, here's my little script for, right, here's what I have to say to this particular objection. So to me, that's the value of scripts. I don't necessarily know them line by line, word for word exact, but if I know the 3 ways to answer this particular objection, I've got tools in my tool chest. So why don't you try this one? With a partner, practice these scripts for overcoming common obstacles in writing offers.